All right, welcome to Halitics. I'm Hal Ginsberg. So glad to talk to you and looking forward to this Saturday's march on Washington to free Palestine. I'm not really under any illusions it will be successful. The entire U.S. government is against any kind of peaceful solution, any kind of resolution that will prevent many, many more deaths in Palestine of Gazans. It is a tragedy. It is, again, I don't like the word genocide. I feel like it's, should only be reserved for the most horrific crimes where an ethnic group is being targeted for elimination. But it is understandable in this context where the people of Gaza are herded into a tiny area and they are being bombed, they are being killed, obviously, in record numbers. And there have been credible reports that the Israeli Defense Forces, the leadership in Israel has talked about putting them in the desert, leaving them in the desert. They have, turned off the internet for a period of time so they can conduct their operations in darkness. It's hard to, say this isn't a genocidal action. I don't like the term. I think it should be reserved for a deliberate effort to actually kill everyone who's a member of a particular identifiable ethnic or religious group. Does seem that this pretty much meets that definition. I don't like to use it again. Maybe that's not what Israel's trying to do, but they sure are acting like it could be what they're trying to do. I will be marching this Saturday in Washington with Code Pink. I hope you'll join me if you're in the area. There are many other actions around the country in support of the people of Palestine. I hope you will join one if you cannot come to DC. If that's not convenient for you, please find one that is. 240-363-7190 is the way to join me on Halitics. 240-363-7190. I do want to start with, I had promoted today's program as one that will focus on media dishonesty, media failures to report accurately what's going on. Generally, there's an understandable reason why they do that. It's because their own interests lie in getting you to believe something that isn't true and in hiding from you the full story. That's generally why the media misrepresents, or even worse, lies. We'll get to that. But just before I was getting ready to come on the program, I saw there was a story about how President Biden slightly changing his tune with respect to an reduction or cut back in hostilities, right? He doesn't use the term ceasefire. He will not use it. He says pause in hostilities. Is this something that we should greet with a certain measure of sanguinarianism? I don't know. Happiness, optimism. Does this reflect indeed a sea change in what the White House is contemplating in the Middle East? Well, let's go to this video. This is from CBC, so Canadian broadcast company, and it was the one I took this because they have a complete, or the most complete I could find in very short notice, coverage of a rabbi protesting the Israeli policy. So let's get to it, and I'll interrupt in a couple places, but here we go.
People, as a rabbi, I need you to call for a ceasefire right now.
All right, so listen to the response. This is a rabbi. Biden is speaking about the war, about American support, virtually, unconditional support, and you'll hear whether that is going to continue, unconditional support for Israel in its ethnic cleansing and its, targeting of civilians and children. And so Rabbi Rosenberg here says, hey, I need you to call for a ceasefire. And she's greeted with boos. And someone says, get out. Get out. What has happened? I guess what has happened to my country? What is happening to my country where a rabbi is saying, hey, you got to stop the killing. You got to do what you can. Call for a ceasefire, President Biden. And she's greeted with heckles and boos and sit-downs. We're losing our soul as a nation.
Now, you can't quite hear Biden's response on that recording, but as I say,
but again, you heard the response from the crowd, and we're going to listen to the reporter because he's going to give you Biden's response. And again, it doesn't make me feel all happy and goose-pimply about things going to get better in the Middle East. But what's most upsetting, again, is that the crowd get out. Where is that? And I have seen this so often on social media, people, quoting the Hamas charter, which is, calls for the elimination of the state of Israel, as though that somehow justifies shooting Palestinians, Gazans, like they're fish in a barrel. As though somehow this ugly document that Hamas put together, understandably in response to what Israel is doing to the people of Palestine, that somehow justifies taking their land, moving into their areas where they've been herded, and then taking even more of it on the West Bank. Somehow, because understandably, Palestinians are so angry, so upset, so full of hate now for the imperialist power that is killing them, killing their children, killing their parents, killing their brothers and sisters, killing their neighbors, keeping them in dire poverty, preventing them from getting the necessities of life. So they turn to a terrorist organization. Who can be surprised? That's what Israel wants. Who can be surprised that the civilians in Gaza, the millions, have to a degree tied themselves to an organization that does call for the elimination of the state of Israel? I mean, is it a surprise? The state of Israel is what's keeping them oppressed in an open-air concentration camp.
It was a small campaign fundraiser, so a White House poll reporter was there, and the poll report could hear, and this is what Biden said. He said, I think we need a pause. A pause means give time to get the prisoners out. Now, that the woman was escorted out chanting ceasefire now, but...
All right, I want to just stop. So he's saying we need a pause to get in other words, the pause is for the Israeli hostages. Now, I would love to get the Israeli hostages out. I get it. They should be safe. But the pause isn't to stop the killing, at least as Biden presents it. The pause isn't to stop the killing of innocent civilians, of children, of babies. That's not what this is about. That's not what Biden's calling for. That's not why he's calling for it. He's saying, well, the hostages, we need to get them out. Isn't that, yes, that's a good reason. I don't disagree. But it's interesting because you'd think that Israel would pause. If Israel's goal really were the security and safety of its own people, the hostages, then wouldn't you think, if that's what they really cared about, then wouldn't they have already paused? Wouldn't they have already said, we're going to work with you for the security of the people that Hamas took prisoner, and we're going to also work to provide security to the Palestinians. If Israel cared about the hostages, what Biden is saying there, or his campaign staff is saying, is the best interests of the hostages would be served if there was a pause, not ceasefire. Of course, I would say ceasefire right now, but what the Biden State Department is saying is, what his campaign is saying is, the best interests of the Israeli hostages would be served by a pause in hostilities. And yet, there's no pause. And yet the killing, the bombing, the targeting continues by Israel. So doesn't that tell you they really aren't interested in the safety of the hostages? This entire exercise, this military violence, this orgy against Gaza is not motivated ultimately by some form of, by some kind of tortured reasoning that this will save our hostages. Heck, they're acting in a way that endangers the few hostages remaining. And we heard that even the hostages themselves, the families of the hostages themselves are saying, no, let's stop it. Stop it. We're begging you, Bibi, to stop it. I played that clip yesterday. All right, 240-363-7190 if you want to join me. Love to talk to you. 240-363-7190. With regard to I do want to get a little more from Biden. Yeah, no, I don't want to move on yet to the few allies that Palestine might have in Congress. I don't want to get to that, the Democratic allies they might have yet. I want to just get a little more, because I think the thought that some of us might have, okay, maybe there is reason for optimism based on what Biden said. I think we have to really temper any hopes there might be a let up in the hostilities by what Biden's staffers have said. So let's see if we can get back to that video here. Let me see if I can get it.
The White House position. The administration, as I say, has repeatedly said that it's not going to dictate how Israel conducts its military operations. John Kirby just last week, his quote was that we're not drawing red lines for Israel. We're going to continue to support them. Friday, we saw the U.S. was one of only 14 countries in the United Nations to vote against a resolution in the General Assembly calling for a ceasefire. Biden said that he understood the emotion here, saying, quote, this is incredibly complicated for the Israelis and incredibly complicated for the Muslim world as well, that he supported the two-state solution.
All right, let me stop it there. So you heard what the State Department said. Kirby, and the spokesperson for Biden, Kirby said, we're not telling Israel what to do. We're not micromanaging their military. They want to go ahead and keep dropping bombs. Go ahead. All we're saying is, yeah, maybe it would make sense to have a pause to get the hostages out, because the safety of the Israeli hostages matters to us. Now, I'm not saying it shouldn't matter. It should matter. But so should the safety of the thousands and thousands and thousands of Palestinians being killed. And that's not a priority. It's not even on the, Etch-a-Sketch. It's not even on the, the board for Biden. It's just the Israeli lives that matter. And yet, okay, that's better than not caring about any lives. The Israelis, the IDF, Bibi, he doesn't give a fat rat's ass about the hostages. He just wants to kill more Palestinians. There's no other way to interpret that. All right, 240-363-7190 if you want to join me. 240-363-7190 if you want to join me. And again, let me just, this is I can wring my hands. Oh, they're so evil. They're so bad. I mean, I could do this about the Chinese government. I think it does awful, awful things. I think that there are lots. The Saudis do terrible things, and we support them too. Right now, Israel is committing genocidal acts against Palestine, and we are rushing. Our government is rushing to support them. A rabbi says, wait, this is wrong. Stop it. I'm asking you. Stop it. And she gets heckled. She gets heckled. That's where we are as a nation. So that's why this is what I'm talking about. And just again, if you want, we'll talk about, where the media gets things so wrong and why, but I just do want to play this for you as well. Why, where the hostages' families are saying stop it. The hostages' families are saying stop it, and yet Israel keeps going.
Stand back! Bring them back!
This evening, the hostage families demonstrated in Tel Aviv before their representatives met for the first time with the Israeli Prime Minister. Many are desperate for the ground invasion and bombing to stop.
All right, so there it is. The Israeli government Netanyahu ostensibly wreaking vengeance on the Palestinian people to show support for and save these hostages, who have been subjected to really horrible terrorist violence and observed, a slaughter. That's the purported reason, right, for all of this. Israel needs to defend itself. And yet, they're not acting consistent with that goal, with the goal of protecting and saving those who they still could potentially protect and save. We have to stop supporting this country. We have to, if we are going to have anything left of our national soul. And again, if you think that because Hamas, last elected by any kind of election, was it 17 years ago in 2006, when most Gazans, 50% of them, are under age 18, when half of all Gazans weren't even born or couldn't speak if they were born, they're somehow supposed to pay the price for the Hamas charter. So where are we? What's our political system's response? Well, if you don't support Israel unequivocally, then we're going to get you out of office. If you have power now, if you have any platform, if you have any influence, if you're in Congress and you don't support Israel 1,000%, we're going to get rid of you. So, squad members, and please understand that what I'm saying now is not going to be some kind of endorsement of the squad or, extolling their wonderful virtues. I mean, they brought a lot of this on themselves. But still, you should be allowed to speak against a massacre, an ongoing, movable massacre. You should be allowed to speak against it without risking challenge from your own party. But that is obviously not the case. So Cori Bush, who I have to say among all the squad members, I think has been the best. I really do. I mean, she has been very willing to take on Israel. She's also been good on the environment. She called out the persecution of Stephen Donziger, the lawyer who took on Chevron Texaco. She really has been a bit more outspoken when it comes to the climate catastrophe, the new Holocaust. I give her some props. Now, I'm not all in for Cori Bush. Certainly, if I lived in St. Louis, I'd vote for her for re-election. unless there was someone just outstanding running against her. But she does, to my way of thinking, spend a lot more time on the identity politics than I like. I think she does foment, to a degree, for political purposes, politics of identity that pits whites and blacks against each other rather than uniting poor, struggling, and working people. So I'm not a fan of that particular strategy. I understand why she does it for her own, I understand it benefits her, but I don't like it. There's a lot of things I could say, but on balance, she's pretty damn good, especially for a Democrat. But she has spoken out against Israel's orgy of violence. And now a quasi-Democrat, Wesley Ball, is going to challenge her in the primary. He's going to fight for Republicans. He's going to fight to keep the Congress, or to turn the Congress red again. It's just barely blue. No, I guess it is red. He's going to stand against a blue Congress. That's what the Democrats are doing. He's doing this. St. Louis County prosecutor Wesley Ball is doing this because that's what the Democratic Party. Do you think he would do this if Hakeem Jeffries, for whom Cori Bush voted to be House Minority Leader? Do you think he would do this if he hadn't gotten a call from highly placed Democratic leadership saying, hey, we got to get rid of this Cori Bush. She's a problem for us. She's making it harder for us to fundraise. Do something about her, please, Wesley. So instead of going after Josh Hawley, the senator, the right-wing extreme senator, Josh Hawley, Wesley Ball is now primarying Cori Bush. That's your Democratic Party. That is your Democratic Party. And she's not the only one facing a challenge from Democratic establishment figures like Wesley Ball. Ilhan Omar also is looking at a challenge. And here's what the Washington Post tells you in that article. She said back in 2019 that Israel's allies in American politics were motivated by money rather than principle. Well, duh. Is that who doesn't doubt? Who questions that? Who do you think really that? Who's the senator from New Jersey? There's two. There's Menendez. He's totally corrupt. Several different attacks on him, and there's also, I think his name is Corey, right? He's African American. I can't remember his name. He may have ran for president. He was a big spokesperson for Hillary in 2016. He was a flack for her. Anyway, I can't remember his name, but I think it's Corey. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Anyway, he's been a big supporter of Israel. A big supporter of question anyone who challenges Israel. Hakeem Jeffries has been a big supporter of Israel. These are Israel's allies in American politics. Do you really think they're not even Jew? Do you think they're not motivated by money? If you don't kowtow, if you don't hew to, if you don't abide by the AIPAC line on Israel, you face a challenge. But if you do what AIPAC wants, you get money, you get contributions, you get support. That's how you win elections in America. Money is the mother's milk of politics. How can anyone doubt that these allies, many of whom aren't even Jewish, are motivated by money? Of course they are. That's why they do it. Why is there no Medicare for all when it's obviously the solution to our healthcare issues? Because of money in politics. How is there any question that what Omar said is true? And yet, the writer of this piece, and I was trying to figure out, and maybe I shouldn't have done that, but I think his name is, well, let's go back to it. What is it? Azi Paybara. I don't know. At first I thought that sounded sort of Arab to me, right? That it was an Arab name, but maybe he could be Jewish. I don't know. But he's writing for the Washington Post or something altogether different. Armenian? I don't know. But whatever it is, I was like, well, whatever you are, you're certainly writing what the Washington Post wants you to write. Because he describes, Ozzy does, the statement that Israel's allies in American politics were motivated by money rather than principle. He describes that as playing into historical stereotypes about wealthy Jews. I mean, I don't even see the connection there. A lot of the allies aren't Jewish. So how is it that a politician, I mean, maybe it's playing into historical stereotypes about politicians who will do anything for a buck. I'm totally at a loss by that. But I guess any way that you can kind of demonize or you can kind of question the motivation or sideline a critic of the corporatocracy, because clearly complete and utter support for Israel is a tenet of the corporatocracy, the military-industrial complex. Clearly. I mean, the companies like Raytheon, we've seen this. Lockheed Martin, their stocks went up. Congress bought shares of stock in the company, in the weapons manufacturers after the attack by Hamas. So, I guess that's for me to say that's playing into historical stereotypes about greedy politicians. Well, they are. I mean, that's the way it is. The stereotype is true about politicians. And then Omar, this is so upsetting to me. So again, I'm not 100% fan of the squad by any means. I like Ilhan Omar. I met her. She's very sweet. She's a nice person. She said, I unequivocally apologize. Why would you apologize for telling the truth? Then she writes that year, which, by the way, there was another intifada against Israel, by Israel against Gaza. She wrote, we've seen unthinkable atrocities committed by the U.S. Hamas. She includes Hamas, Israel, Afghanistan, and the Taliban. So of that group, 3 are Muslim, Hamas, Afghanistan, and the Taliban. Only 2 are Judeo-Christian. And yet she gets criticized for saying that. And then she again, no way equating terrorist organizations with democratic countries with well-established judicial systems. Yeah, you shouldn't equate them. Democratic countries with well-established judicial systems should act a hell of a lot better than they are. We should demand far more. We should demand far more of democratic institutions because we have some power over them. What the U.S. and Israel are doing, I don't believe in collective guilt. But to the extent that you may, as a citizen of a country, be responsible for what your government does, certainly Americans and Israelis are far more deservedly blamed for what our countries have done than Palestinians who have zero power or influence over the Hamas, or virtually zero, and who understandably feel a certain affinity with Hamas because Hamas is fighting against their oppressors. All right, 240-363-7190, 240-363-7190. So you can see how the Washington Post really misrepresents the positions of those who criticize even mildly Israel. Somehow if you say, well, Hakeem Jeffries, who gets tens of thousands of dollars from AIPAC and the pro-Israel lobby. If you say that, you're playing into historical tropes about greedy wealthy Jews. Color me completely confused by that remark. But it's what the Washington Post decided to post. All right. If you want a little bit better, I believe, a little bit more honest coverage of that run in Missouri, in St. Louis County, where the prosecutor Wesley Ball is going to now primary Cori Bush. I think Truth Out does a decent job here, so I want to just show what Sharon Zhang, I believe, Sharon Zhang had to say. So instead of seeking to unseat far-right Senator Josh Hawley, the Democrat is zeroing in on a progressive. This is from yesterday, right? Yeah, that's your Democratic Party. He would not be doing this. He wouldn't be challenging Cori Bush if it wasn't clearly what the Democratic corporatist establishment wants. And so Sharon Zhang does a nice job, I think. And I apologize if I'm butchering her name. I think I'm getting it. Just totally unprincipled. The support for Bell among, Democratic donors, and his decision is completely unprincipled. So Bush rose to prominence as a protester in BLM, protesting Michael Brown's killing. And it's interesting. I didn't put this part of the article in there, but Wesley Bell, apparently when he ran for prosecutor in St. Louis County, said he was going to look again at prosecuting the cop who shot and killed Michael Brown. I forgot his last name. Darren was his first name. And I don't think that's a good use of your time as a prosecutor. The Justice Department looked very closely at that shooting. There was a grand jury convened. You may not like the way it was handled. They found that there wasn't grounds to prosecute the cop. Does appear from the video that Brown was moving towards the officer when he was shot. And again, the Justice Department under Obama made the decision not to prosecute. So I don't think that's the best use of your time as a prosecutor, but that's what he campaigned as. And yet now, this prosecutor who was elected as a staunch police, justice and policing prosecutor, a progressive prosecutor, is now, isn't that amazing? He's challenging Cori Bush because she says Israel should stop killing Palestinians. And the message is clear. Democrats would rather give up a potential seat in the Senate with a challenge by a prominent member of the party than allow one more pro-Palestinian lawmaker in the House. No question. That's your party. If you are at any blue will do, you got to vote against Trump. Well, vote for, I guess, Wesley Bell. We need a different system. We need to move in a different direction. I have been so disappointed by Cornel West, but I don't know where else to turn. Let me know. Let me know. If you think there's a better way to go, let me know. I'd love to know. Love to know what it is. And then you can see from Truth Out, by the way, there's others, right? I mentioned those. There's other squad members who are facing real challenges. And it's, it's just this is our system. We have a duty. If we're going to say the Palestinians, if you're going to say, because I don't say, if you're going to say the Palestinians are responsible for Hamas because they haven't, they haven't risen up collectively, then how can you possibly justify our failure to rise up against our government. Ilhan Omar, mentioned her, facing a storm of criticism, which apparently the Washington Post saw as justified because she included Israel and the United States as terrorist groups, along with Hamas, Afghanistan, and the Taliban. And I mean, yeah. I mean, just look at those pictures from Abu Ghraib if you want more proof. Just look at the weddings that Obama droned if you want more proof. Look at Trump's increase in droning activity and the people he locked up at the border if you want to question whether we're terrorists. So Omar and Summer Lee are facing challengers who have cited their support of Israel as a reason for the challenge. Well, George Latimer, they don't put his name there, but that's his name. He's the Westchester County executive, is citing Israel as a reason he may challenge Rep. Jamal Bowman. So let's go through these because they're slightly different people. Jamal Bowman he's a problematic guy. I mean, pulling that burglar alarm, he has really, I don't think he's really demonstrated that he is a real serious professional in Congress. He's not my favorite by any means. I don't think he's been willing to challenge House leadership in any way. So under other circumstances, I might consider George Latimer, but not if he's bringing a challenge at the behest of House leadership or Democratic leadership because Bowman is insufficiently pro-Israel. No, that would be a reason for me to strongly support Jamal Bowman. Summer Lee has really stepped up, I think, in a lot of ways. And I like Ilhan Omar, I mentioned that earlier, as much as any Democrat that I like. I would note that all three of them voted for Hakeem Jeffries to be House Minority Leader. And under those circumstances, it's very hard for me to be too outraged by anyone who challenged it, because it was so wrong to do that. I believe they all either voted for or abstained when, well, Summer Lee wasn't in Congress at the time, but the other two, I believe, did vote for Nancy Pelosi to be House Leader in 2021, House Speaker in 2021, and that was a terrible thing to do. So these are not real progressives. These are not people focused on making life better for their constituents. They didn't force the vote on Medicare for all. But the last reason for them to be challenged is because they've taken on Israel. All right, 2403, a little bit. I mean, in kind of in a no-brainer kind of way. By saying, well, maybe Israel's going too far. Maybe the settlements aren't the best idea. Maybe they shouldn't be bombing innocent civilians. No, we're not going to just give them carte blanche. All right, I wanted to move to this. I also found this interesting in terms of media misrepresentations. So this is from, and let me get the whole thing up there. This is from our, well, I don't know if I often say our friends, right? Biden's always, or, who always tells people that his friend is Bernie. I think that's a little odd. Like, how are these corporate shills, how are they your friends? That's something Brianna Joy Gray has made the point. We don't want them to be your friend, Bernie. We don't want you to view those people as your friends. They're not our friends. So why are they your friends? And I agree with her there. So I don't know if I should call 538 our friends. They're not the worst. But this is from 538. So I mentioned, was it yesterday? Was Monday with Arlen. And I'm still trying to remember, what is the name of the guy from New Jersey? Bob Menendez's the other senator from New Jersey, Corey, what is it? Come on, 240-363-7190, or put it in the chat. so I can see it because I don't see anyone in the chat. Sometimes they get chat comments. I love the chat. Got some good chat comments yesterday from Jay. So Jay, thank you. But Corey, I can't remember. All right, Dean Phillips, who, right? Minnesota Representative Dean Phillips, who, to the delight of the dozens of Dean Phillips fans everywhere, announced he's running against Joe Biden for president. And okay, I mean, it's sort of a yawn. It's like it's interesting for the cycle. This is a guy nobody ever heard of. And what does 538 say? Well, while 2020 presidential candidate, now, of course, RFK is not running in the primary anymore. He's running as an independent, so he doesn't count. But while 2020 presidential candidate Marianne Williamson is also running, Phillips quickly moves to the front of the line as Biden's most notable opponent within his own party. I'm like, what? How is that right? How is Biden's most notable opponent in the Democratic Party not Marianne Williamson? It's not Dean Phillips. No one ever heard of Dean Phillips. Nobody knows who Dean Phillips is. I'm not a fan of Marianne Williamson. I wouldn't vote for her. But people have heard of her. When she ran for president in 2020, she gained notoriety. She garnered attention. She was mentioned in news cycles. People know who she is. She's a self-help guru. She's an Oprah personality. That's who she is. She's a somewhat critical leftist of the Democratic Party who will only go so far. No one knows who Dean Phillips is. So it's just false for 538 to claim that Phillips quickly moves to the front of the line. And why would they say that? Because they just want to mock. They don't want, because they're owned by ABC News. If you haven't been in Congress, if you are somewhat independent of the fundraising grind that Congress demands of every member, especially the Democratic Party demands of its members, if you are somewhat able to, have a separate base like Williamson does, admittedly of kind of a little bit, kooky people who believe in all that crystals and stuff. Sorry if you're one of them. Call in and yell at me if you don't agree. I know. I have a good friend who's a Williamson supporter. I really like her. The friend, I mean. But no, I don't get it. I really don't. I don't see it. I don't understand it. Yeah, she said some good things, but lots of people say good things. I don't view her as a real serious candidate, but she's clearly a more notable opponent. And let me say this. If Marianne Williamson was a truly pro-peace, if she was willing to say, no, we need a complete break from the Democratic Party, I would be more willing to take her seriously as a candidate. But I have not seen that. I met her, I saw her, I heard her apologize for Biden and say how much better he was than Trump, and thank God we don't have Trump. So no, I can't endorse her candidacy or see her as a real champion of the people. But the fact of the matter is, however I see her, she is the more notable opponent. But ABC News doesn't want you to think of anybody who can, has some source of funding, some source of support beyond their membership in and their power within the Democratic Party or the two-party system. So that's why she is not, despite much more fame, despite having run before and gotten some support, and despite the fact that in the two surveys that have been done since Phillips announced that he's running for president, that he's going to challenge Biden, despite the fact that in those two surveys, which also included Marianne Williamson, she did better. And I'm not saying she did great. She's not killing or anything like that. The support for Biden has really coalesced. Yeah, they mentioned Kennedy, although I think it was just he was in there, but they're not going to even give his numbers. You probably can figure him out. So Williamson and Phillips way down, 68, 69 points, somewhere like that below Biden. And Williamson just barely, I was a little surprised to see this. Williamson just barely ahead of Phillips in those two polls, but still she is ahead. She's a more notable challenger in the Democratic Party. But that's not to 538's taste to acknowledge that. All right, I'm pretty much done. I'm done here. If you wanted to call in, you had your chance and you didn't take advantage of it. So tomorrow's the free-for-all. I'll be on then, and I'd love to talk to you if you got a chance to join me then. Otherwise, I'll be on Monday with Arlen. And please, let me just one more time platform, because I always want you to know about these great progressives out there who are fighting for all of us, fighting for a better world. And I don't know that any group, I love my good friends at Climate Defiance. I may be involved in a protest next week, and I'll let you know more about that in DC. I love my good friends in Climate Defiance. Right now, the evil we must face that's right there is what's happening in Palestine, the atrocities committed by Israel against Gaza. I'll be on the mall, or actually Freedom Plaza, but we'll march to the mall. You can learn much more at codepink.org. And have a great day.